Welcome to another edition of Huckins on Film. I'm your host Kyle Huckins, and we're talking Christmas movies. Kinda. Thanks to the Cinema Snob, I went a little nuts and decided to watch the Silent Night, Deadly Night series. 1 through 5. Did that last week. Spurred on basically by his review of Silent Night, Deadly Night 2. You know, Eric Freeman in all of his garbage day glory. Well, turns out there was a remake of the original put out this year. It's just called Silent Night. Yeah. Anytime they remake something but change the title, that's usually a warning. It's like next month, Texas Chainsaw 3D comes out. They didn't even have the guts to put the word massacre in the title. Don't worry, you're gonna get a review on it. I'm not expecting to like that movie, though. If they prove me, I would love to be pleasantly surprised. It does have Bill Moseley in it, so they got that going for it, But yes, the Deadly Night has been dropped. It's just Silent Night. This movie sucked. This movie really sucked. It's not good. Oh. I mean, there were... kind of hard to get into too much without giving too many spoilers. It does have one saving grace in it, though. The local sheriff is played by Malcolm McDowell. I can watch Malcolm McDowell in anything, because no matter how bad the movie is, and I'm fairly certain he would be the first to admit that, oh yeah, he's been in some crap. He always throws himself... He hams it up at some point, enough to be funny. You know, it's like, oh, okay, at least I got a Malcolm fix out of it. And that's really the best thing this movie's got going for it. In fact, screw it, I have to give away his best line in the whole movie. They think they have the killer. One of his subordinates is trying to convince him that they haven't found the killer. And according to Occam's razor, you know, generally the most direct explanation is the correct one. According to that, they do have the killer. Anyway, subordinate's trying to convince him they don't have the killer. And he just looks at her and says, "You're putting avocado on the burger." Well, she looks at him confused because... hell, I was confused. That's, what does that mean? What's simple is always best. Then she keeps the argument going. Just says, "You're putting hummus on the avocado on the burger." Just completely ridiculous line out of nowhere. But it's delivered by Malcolm McDowell in all of his hammy glory. It was really funny. But the rest of the movie, it's... for the most part, it's not really a badly done movie. What I don't like is it... First of all, it looks like a Saw sequel. And this, I like the Saw movie. Well, I liked the first four. I thought the last three were absolute garbage. I did not care for them in the slightest. But I like the first four a lot. These really do remind me of the over-direction of Darren Lynn Bousman. And I genuinely like some of his stuff. But he really does overdo it at times. I mean, it's not as over the top as Boseman's direction, but everything has that same kind of... well, first of all, it's got the same problem a lot of modern horror films have. The color palette is very flat. I don't know if that's a consequence of shooting on digital or what. But even though the picture is sharper, the colors just don't pop. Everything gets, metaphorically speaking, kind of gray. I really don't like that. The acting, I'd say the acting is fine. Nothing great, other than watching McDowell ham it up. Although even his performance is a little weird, because it takes place in Wisconsin. He's been a Wisconsin cop for 40 years. In the beginning, he just sounds like... Malcolm, I don't know what accent you're going for, but it's not working. And then by the end of his role, he's just, oh, sod it, I'm Malcolm McDowell, I'll do as I bloody please. Fine with me. Go ahead, just do the Connery, do the Neeson, where just... yeah, he's got the clear... whatever. No one cares. Shut up. The story is very different. I will give them that. Because Silent Night, Deadly Night 1, it's the story of the killer. In this, the killer's almost an afterthought. His story is just buried. You know, you don't even find out who it is until the end. And part of it is because they tried to make it like a giallo. One of those old Italian crime flicks where, the killer could be anyone in the cast. They try that, it doesn't work. Like, there's a few Santas in this who are set up like they could be the killer. One was played by Donald Logue. And he's a loudmouth asshole who hates Christmas. But he's just, he's doing the Santa thing just for the pay. But he's like telling children all kinds of horrible things. It's actually kind of funny in a sick way. It's one of those, no, he's not the killer, he's just a douchebag. Another guy who's definitely, he's on the shady side, and he's working as a fake Santa. But again, you can tell he isn't the killer. Especially during one scene where things get physical, and that's pretty much a dead giveaway that it's not him. Also, most of the reveals happen too early. So it's just, if you own a watch, they're not the killer. The kills themselves, they're really this is where another Saw comparison comes in, because a lot of the kills are really over the top. Like the first one in the movie, it's a borderline Rube Goldberg. It's not quite Jigsaw, but it's oh, that's a lot of work. That's really just too much effort to put into that. Also, a lot of the way the character, just there's a lot of stuff in this that just no one would react that way. They attempted to to kind of acknowledge the big scare that happened around the original. Because there's a girls' choir singing Silent Night in their sexy Santa gear, and the priest who's leading them he's getting a few pictures of them. They're all smiling, and you see it first camera. He's taking pictures of their tits. Then he goes to his congregation. He starts delivering a fire and brimstone sermon about them all being sinners. And it's just a guy in a Santa suit and an old woman in there. And he's getting in the Santa's face, going all high and mighty, when Santa just ends him. I think it was meant to be a humorous stab, so to speak. It was just... At the end, he doesn't even kill the old woman. He just, gives her $40. Because... It's just very oddly done. Also, there are also the obvious homages to the first one. There is an antler kill. Although the way that whole thing is set up is completely bonkers. Because it's the mayor's daughter, and she's talking about showing her boyfriend their guest house. But I don't know if I think this is how she was directed to act. The mayor's like, yeah, go on. But, I mean, the way she's playing it, she's totally acting like, oh, by the way, we're gonna go fuck in the guest house. Just one of those, why would you be... And why would you tell him that? I mean, she doesn't come right out and say it, but she might as well. It's being about as subtle as Brian Blessed on Quaaludes. And he doesn't figure it out. It's just very... What is going on here? Is anyone paying attention? In fact, the boyfriend, earlier in the movie, has a scene where he's visiting his grandpa in an old folks' home, and he's been catatonic, and all of a sudden he just warns him about Santa. It's one of those, it's supposed to be a homage, but it just feels like it felt ripped off and tacked on. It's one of those scenes. I mean, it was a great scene in the first one. I really didn't feel like it needed to be there. Or if it did, it didn't need to involve just an ancillary character who's axe bait. And it just felt like, well, they like this from the first one, so we're going to throw it in there. And the same with the antler kill. although it was largely CGI this time, and it didn't look right. It really didn't look good at all. And a lot of the gore in this is CGI. Horror movie producers, just put the laptop down. I beg you. It never looks good. Seriously, it never looks good. It is so obviously fake. Just throw Caro syrup on everything. Probably a hell of a lot cheaper. And it actually looks like gore. They also had... They even had a little bit of Silent Night, Deadly Night too. Because yes, they had to get the phrase garbage day shoehorned in there. And it was just, oh, just had to make, seriously, that was one of those scenes where the fourth wall was gone. Like, he might as well have just gone, and of course immediately after he gets killed. But, he just says it normally. He doesn't go all Freeman, have his eyebrows just lose their mind and spasm go, garbage day! Seriously, if you've never seen the original Silent Night, Deadly Night 2, watch it just for his rampage. It's awesome. I mean, it's one of the worst acted things ever, but it's great. But it was such an obvious, forced rush job cash-in for the holidays. And as if all of this wasn't enough, the ending. Oh. It's like, basically, it was one of those endings like, yeah, doesn't really make sense, but there's going to be a sequel. It's just very poorly done, and you know what? If I want to see this much use of flamethrower, I'll watch The Exterminator flicks. Because Robert Ginty, way more convincing. This is just... I mean, I get they at least tried to take it in a different direction. But the script's just not good. It really feels like this thing was... It feels like they filmed a first draft. It's really just not good at all. Like I said, my expectations were low. But I do try to go into something I haven't seen with an open mind every time. And honestly, I was into this one a bit because it did have Malcolm McDowell, who I've always liked. Honestly, his was the only performance even worth talking about. I mean, the lead in this is Jamie King. She's okay. She's very forgettable. She's kind of bland. The fact that this review's gone on this long and I'm just mentioning her now, that should really say volumes. But... Or actually, I even watched the extras. It was some behind-the-scenes stuff and a few deleted scenes. Deleted scenes like 99% of DVDs out there. Nothing that needed to be in the movie. Just strange because this movie did feel like it had scenes missing. But they didn't even make it onto the DVD, so I'm guessing they were never shot. Yeah, that was one of those stories. It moves. It's methodically, which isn't a bad thing. But then at the end, like trying to tell everyone who the killer is and everything, it gets incredibly rushed. It's like they were going to get. It's kind of like they looked at their watches and went, oh boy, we better finish this. So they half-assed it. I mean, again, I'm not completely opposed to remakes, but this one just didn't really make the grade. And I don't even think the original Silent Night, Deadly Night is a great movie. I like it, but it's not great. But so much better than this. One other thing. They also commit one of the horror movie sins of, really, since Scream popularized this for some reason. You know, the whole, let's make the characters so utterly grating on the soul that not only do you not care if they die, actually you're kind of rooting for the killer. Thus, completely blowing how horror movies work. Now you're supposed to connect with them. You're supposed to not want them dead. And then them being killed, that's where the horror comes from. When a character you want to die dies, that's not horror. It's a grim satisfaction. It may even be a belly laugh, depending on how awful they were and how sick you are. But there's nothing horrific about it. And, yeah. Drives me nuts. I don't say your characters have to be perfect angels or anything, far from it. But that doesn't mean they can't be identifiable, likable. Well, come on. We all have our flaws. Character doesn't have to be perfect for you to be able to identify with them or like them. Just about everyone in this just, yeah, I'm kind of rooting for the killer here. So, yeah. That Silent Night, it sucked. Don't bother. This is Kyle Huckins for Huckins on Film, fucking off.